I'm Ngaire Takano. I'm based in Mechelen in Belgium. Um, Previous years, I have been primarily with the mindset of sourcing and advisory on traceability when it comes to textiles. Though the last 2 years, things have slightly changed where I have been developing circular processing methods for wool, which has a key focus on less water, less energy, no chemicals, and more use of the wool, which means that there is less waste, more use, and also using the right wool for the job, because that is a problem. In addition, I work as a wool advisor, looking at the usability of it, sourcing it, processing it. I've just recently got a felting machine, and also market and business development is what I've been doing. Prior to that, as I mentioned just in the beginning, was that I used to be, well, still am a sourcing advisor, specializing in key specific key areas: the artisan, the organic, the circular, before it became even the trendy word, because everyone seems to be bouncing that word around, just like sustainability at the moment. But mainly key natural materials like your wool, silk, cotton, hemp, linen. And that sourcing for designers and brands has been directly from source, with the complete traceability mapping and transparency for that textile, that or yarn or fabric, or just just even, it's not just textiles, but it has also been packaging, and has also been yarn as well as also trims too. I was trying to find the word. So I do come from a background having worked in wool. I have worked on sheep farms in Australia some many years ago, and waste has always been a key area where I have looked at when I have been auditing factories. And having visited a linen factory here in Belgium a couple of years ago, I was looking at the amount of waste just from the lint that was coming off. And it just got me thinking, and that was sort of my starting process in terms of working with waste. In addition, I also work as an advisor in reduction of waste and creating opportunities for bio and natural material waste to be used. And I also support as an advisor, producer, R&D, auditor on factories and production. So what woolly challenges I see for the wool industry at the moment is that only 50% of the wool is used, and the rest equals waste. You take 500 kilos of wool to a spinnere or a mill, you'll end up getting only about, say, 250 to 300 kilos back of that. So there is this problem, even though people say, yes, wool is great, we're still processing the wool in a very old traditional method. And I know that works. Yet the problem is that in the last 18 months, factories have seen an increase threefold for some factories, especially in the UK and also here in Belgium and the Netherlands, threefold in their pricing for water, electricity. So we all know electricity costs and gases have gone up and increased. Well, this has had an impact on the wool, which subsequently has also meant that not a lot of people are processing the wool. So there are a lot of farmers here, not just in Belgium, but also Europe-wide, that are stockpiling wool, with the hope that either energy prices will drop or China will open their doors again and the price will be right, and we'll go back to sort of the year 2015-16 when prices were good. Problem also is that the usability of the wool, as I have mentioned previously, the right wool for the right job. And again, it is also depending on the processing by the mills that do the wool. Most of them just throw it in. Yes, they have already skirted it and they have picked it as well. but still we can use those picked pieces and those skirted pieces for alternatives, and not just always thinking that wool can be used for fashion. Yes, it does have a key part, but there is also a wider opportunity. And then it was a big thing when I was still living in Australia and still working with sheep, and seeing how the environment was impacting on the wool through the weather, the climate, as well as what they're eating. And basically, I won't be blasphemery, but I said the land needs love, the sheep need good food, the farmers need to reconnect, and the shearers know how to shear. And this is a problem that we have in Europe-wide. Again, it's not just Belgium. We have farmers that can shear, and there's a lot of farmers that do shear their own sheep because they may have 4 or 5 sheep, they may have 50 sheep, but because of the price and the value of the wool is poor, they do a lot of clips. So therefore, instead of getting your nice long fibers that you want, you're getting sort of short clipped pieces. And those cuttings are not ideal to sort of create textile. At the same time, processors also need to open their minds in how to use the wool. Businesses need to also remove the reliance on man-made fibers and materials. And the consumers need to know how to use, care, and respect what they wear and what they buy. And these are sort of the areas of sort of what I have mapped over the last 18 months when it comes to just sort of seeing how the industry is. Because we're all talking about the people that are weaving, the people that are sort of dyeing, but we're not looking at the origin of where it comes from and that whole transparency and traceability of that. So they're sort of the key challenges. What can be done? There's a lot that can be done, and it is all positive. One of the pictures that you see on this slide is a piece of wool that has got a lot of plant matter in it, and this is one of the biggest problems. And when you are getting your wool and it is being processed in the traditional process, yes, it does clean it out, but there is still some plant matter in there. But if the farmers are educated and they're empowered to look after their sheep, this can change, which therefore will be absolutely incredible for ensuring that you get really good quality wool. But ultimately, when the sheep are not fed well, or they have high levels of stress, especially ewes during lambing season and pre-lambing season, you can actually monitor the wool count, and the micron count of the wool can actually show the health and the well-being of the sheep. Just like us as humans, when we're sick, our hair falls out, we can actually get it tested to see what's happening with our system as well. And wool is very similar to our structure of our human hair. So for me, I see it is something that needs to be sort of driven from European, because yes, we have merinos here, but we also have well over 350 different other breeds. And these breeds have been long-term, a lot of them. So why should we lose these breeds and continue to support them, but continue to support them to live for future generations as well? So when I'm looking at wool, I'm using 100% of the wool. So basically, I am setting up a mill to process the wool in a circular manner. And I envisage that I will use up to at least 90% of the wool, compared to the 50%, which I mentioned earlier. I also want to see what can be done within the industry is tracking sheep's wool quality, and build an actual resource for European breeds and their micron counts. And by building this resource library and their micron counts, ideally it needs to be monitored over a period of a few years, so you can build up a good resource, at the same time ensure that it is reliable. Because some people may say that, a breed here in Belgium we have called Osant. The Osant breeds, their micron count is anything between 23 and say 26 microns. But if their weather one year might have impacted their wool, it could have actually increased it even further. So this is why a resource needs to be built, at the same time tracked over a longer period of time. A reduction in processing times for scouring and carding. At the moment, you take your wool to a mill and it will take about 18 months to process. That's the worst scenario, but generally it is 12 months. So we have an abundance of wool, yet we don't have enough mills. And we don't have enough mills that are looking at the energy costs as well as the water usage. And this is where I see there is a gap to sort of be innovative and also challenging the industry. Ultimately, also, what can be done is fairer pricing for farmers and also shearers as well. Because at the moment, the farmers say, yes, can you come and shear my sheep? We'll give you €3 and you can take the wool away with you as well. But shearers are also saying, well, the value of the wool is sort of non-existent. So therefore, why should we be burdened with this when we can't resell it on? Ultimately, again, reskilling of people and the return of local production and transparency and traceability and education is key. And circular businesses also need to look at meeting EU, Belgium targets on circularity, but also honesty, and build upon the skills. And ideally, few typos, apologies, central processing whereupon skills and knowledge can be shared for employment. So how can we wool together? We can build strength and stability by co-creating and supporting each other. We can also remove the island mentality. We do have the problem where people want to be very insular, and I can understand that. But it's also trying to build that level of respect and safety in terms of being able to share and collaborate. I've learned that I can't do it on my own. I have to have experts and other people who I can bounce information and questions off with that I myself don't know. But for us to work together, I see that we do have to build that strength of support, which I can see the HeWare community can do that. I just think we need to build it, even more stronger. I'm also happy to participate in discussions and panel and advisory sessions. I'm also really keen to sort of start lobbying governments more and focusing on different business models, sharing resources, i.e. equipment and locations. I am finding to find a location for the mill is quite challenging. At the same time, also the funding is the biggest problem. And then I think also with the HeWare community, it is good to sort of support them and build collaborations, again, removing the island mentality and have clients also with advice. Woolly HeWare, I sort of followed the theme of wool across the presentation, so excuse me. I think a toolbox resource of producers across the EU, which is what I mentioned before we started this presentation. A library of wool and sheep in the EU, especially the rare breeds. Take, for example, there's a cooperative of 4 farmers in southern Italy. They've got a very rare breed of sheep. They can't get it processed within Italy, but anything under €70 per kilo, and that's just washing the wool. That's not even actually spinning it. And they are now sort of also discussing presently that they may just stop the breeding, and these are the only farmers that are breeding this very rare breed. More knowledge needs to be needed around the wool use and also championing EU local wool breeds. Everyone is focused on merino because yes, it does have its purpose, but the wool that we have in Europe and the local wool breeds do also have a purpose. You know, I have, from one of the methods of the cleaning, I've been able to enable the wool to be actually softer, which therefore means that it spins up lovely, because I've got an e-spinning machine, and I've been testing all the wool that I have been cleaning, and also carding it, and the full process production. Undertaking R&D on waste during production, I think is another thing that Hereware could also look at. Before this wool journey, which has always been present, I have taken waste from linen and cotton factories, and I've actually turned it not just into paper, but also felted fabric as well, but by doing different methodologies. So I think we need to look at the waste if we want to be completely circular. And I'm happy to connect with other members and build, you know, more active activities and engagement. Conclusion, I would say, is ability to have more than one. Let's also unite, and that goes back to the point of let's stop trying to have these islands, but make them much bigger. Connections are key to start the process in building and growing a resilience. We need to do more than talk. And I know there's a lot happening and there's a lot occurring, though that information is always not fed through because of the multiple networks, or people just think they may not be interested, or they just also don't have the time. So I think if we can create more doing than talking, then that would be also helpful. The community group is great. Just, you know, I think it needs to be strengthened, and we can therefore get more engagement and making further positive steps. And I will just say wool can help knit these relationships together, whereupon what we're all doing. So that's me.